Have you ever wondered how the English language, the lingua franca of our time, came to be? An intriguing question indeed. The origins of English, like many other languages, are deeply rooted in history, woven into the tapestry of human migration, conquest, and cultural exchange. In the 5th century, a turning point arrived with the invasion of Britain by 3 Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. From the foggy coasts of what is now Germany and Denmark, these tribes brought with them their distinct dialects, forming the foundation of what we now recognize as Old English. This was a language vastly different from the English we know today, with a complex system of declensions and a rich array of strong verbs. But English was not to remain in this form for long. A transformative influence arrived in the form of Latin, introduced by Christian missionaries in the late 6th century. Latin was the language of the Church, and it brought with it a wealth of new vocabulary, infusing the Germanic base of Old English with a host of Latin-derived words. This infusion marked a significant step in the evolution of the English language. Yet, another wave of change was on the horizon. In the 8th century, the Viking invasions began. The Norsemen, speaking Old Norse, a language closely related to Old English, left a significant mark on the English vocabulary. They introduced new words, many of which are still in use today. The intermingling of Old English, Latin, and Old Norse created a dynamic linguistic landscape, setting the stage for the further evolution of the English language. The language was becoming less inflected and more analytical, moving away from the complex declension system of Old English. Thus began the journey of the English language, heavily influenced by invasions and the spread of Christianity. This journey, filled with invasions, cultural exchanges, and the flux of time, has shaped and reshaped English into the language we know and use today. As we delve deeper into this journey, we will uncover more fascinating aspects of the evolution of English, but that's a tale for another scene. The English language as we know it was far from formed. The next significant transformation came in the form of the Norman conquest. In the year 1066, a seismic shift occurred in the history of the English language with the Norman conquest. This pivotal event brought with it a wave of Latin and French influence that would forever change the linguistic landscape of England. The Normans, who hailed from present-day Normandy in France, spoke Old Norman, a language that was heavily influenced by Latin and Old French. As they established their rule over England, their language seeped into every corner of English society, from the law courts to the church, and even into the homes of ordinary people. One cannot overstate the impact of this linguistic invasion. It's estimated that over 10,000 French words entered the English language as a direct result of the Norman conquest. These words were not just fleeting additions. They were deeply ingrained into the vocabulary of the English people, forming the backbone of what we now know as Middle English. An excellent example of this fusion of languages can be found in the Ornamental Chronicle. This key text, written in the 12th century, is a unique blend of Old English and Old Norman. It showcases the transition from Old English with its Germanic roots to Middle English with its heavy French influence. The Ornamental Chronicle is an invaluable resource for linguists, serving as a tangible testament to the evolution of the English language during this period. But the influence of the Normans was not limited to vocabulary. They also brought with them new sentence structures and grammar rules, which further enriched and diversified the English language. The Normans' impact on English was so profound that it's often said that English is a language that borrows other languages and follows them down dark alleys to mug them for loose grammar and vocabulary. The English language was evolving, absorbing, and transforming, still not quite the language we know today. The English language was about to undergo its most significant transformation yet, stepping into what we now identify as modern English. A golden age of discovery and learning, the Renaissance, breathed life into the evolution of the English language. This period of cultural, artistic, political, and economic rebirth following the Middle Ages introduced a new wave of Latin and Greek words into the English lexicon. Scholars, poets, and artists, inspired by the classical world, started to express their ideas, not in the traditional Latin, but in their native English. As they did this, they borrowed liberally from the rich vocabularies of Latin and Greek, adding a new level of complexity and sophistication to English. Words like metaphor, philosophy, and dialogue entered the English language, enriching its vocabulary and expanding its ability to express complex thoughts and ideas. This linguistic cross-pollination was a major driver in the transition from Middle to modern English, giving the language a sheen of elegance and intellectual prestige. However, the biggest game changer in the birth of modern English was a technological innovation, the invention of the printing press by William Caxton. This revolutionary machine, introduced in England in the late 15th century, made books more accessible to the general public. For the first time, knowledge was not confined to the clergy or the aristocracy. It was available to anyone who could read. But the printing press did more than democratize knowledge. It also played a crucial role in standardizing the English language. As books became widely available, there was a need for a common language that everyone could understand. The dialect of London, where Caxton set up his press, became the standard. Spelling and grammar rules became more fixed, and the fluidity of Middle English slowly gave way to the more structured modern English. The English language was now recognizable, but its journey to universality was just beginning. How did a language born on a small island nation become the global lingua franca? The spread of English worldwide is largely attributed to British colonialism. The British Empire, at its zenith, spanned across vast regions of the globe. It brought with it the English language, which was imposed as a medium of communication, administration, and education. In North America, the language took root with the establishment of the first British colonies. Over time, English became the dominant language, evolving with the incorporation of local influences and immigrant languages. This led to the birth of American English, a distinct dialect with its unique vocabulary, spelling, and pronunciation. Moving towards the Caribbean, English spread in a different manner. Here it encountered a multitude of languages and cultures. This gave birth to a variety of English-based creoles, languages that blend English with local linguistic elements, creating a distinctive and vibrant linguistic landscape. In Africa, English permeated through the colonial rule of the British. It was used as the language of governance and education in many regions. After gaining independence, several African nations retained English as an official language, leading to the evolution of African English dialects. Asian countries like India, Malaysia, and Singapore also experienced the spread of English through British colonial rule. In these regions, English served as a unifying language amidst multilingual societies. Post-independence, these nations retained English as an official language, leading to the development of unique Asian English dialects. In each of these regions, English adapted and evolved, absorbing local influences, creating a tapestry of dialects and creoles. This not only testifies to the language's versatility, but also its ability to transcend cultural boundaries. The story of English is indeed a fascinating one. From its humble beginnings on the British Isles, it journeyed across oceans, climbed mountains, and traversed deserts to reach the farthest corners of the world. It adapted, it evolved, and it prospered. From the British Isles to distant lands, English had become a global language. Today, English stands as more than just a language. It is a symbol of globalization, a bridge uniting different cultures. In our modern world, English has become the lingua franca, the common tongue through which we connect and communicate. It is the language of diplomacy, of commerce, of science, and of the internet. The World Wide Web, which has become an integral part of our daily lives, is predominantly English. It's the language you'll find on the signs in international airports, in the lyrics of popular music, and in the dialogue of blockbuster films. In the realm of global commerce, English is the language of trade agreements, of business meetings and international conferences. It is the language that allows corporations from different corners of the world to understand each other, to negotiate contracts and make deals. It is the language that propels the global economy forward, driving growth and fostering cooperation. But English in the modern world is not just about business and diplomacy. It is also the language of popular culture. It's the language of Hollywood, of Netflix and Spotify, of best-selling novels and chart-topping songs. It's the language that shapes our understanding of the world, that tells us stories, that makes us laugh and cry. And yet, despite its global reach, English is not a static, unchanging entity. It is a living, breathing language, constantly evolving and adapting. Each year, new words and phrases are added to the English lexicon, reflecting the changing times and trends. Slang words, internet lingo, and even emojis have found their way into our everyday speech, testament to the ever-changing nature of language. In the grand scheme of things, English is more than just a tool for communication. It is a cultural artifact, a reflection of our society and our times. It is a testament to our ability to evolve, to adapt, to change. It is a symbol of our interconnectedness, of our shared humanity. The English language, forever evolving, forever adapting, continues its journey, etching new chapters in its rich and diverse history.